Yesterday, the world's oldest monarch died after Saudi Arabian King Abdullah bin Abdulaziz passed away at the age of 90. Leaders from all over the world expressed their deep condolences for Abdullah, with Buckingham Palace even flying its flag at half-mast to honor the deceased king. Meanwhile, media headlines from around the globe praise the king as a reformer who oversaw unprecedented changes, especially with regards to women's rights in the country. So here to discuss this reaction as well as Abdullah's true record, I'm joined now by Ali Al-Ahmed, Director of the Institute of Gulf Affairs. Thank you so much for coming on, Ali.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start by talking about the legacy of King Abdullah, because many of the obituaries are touting him as a reformer, and I wanted to see if you agree.
No, this is incorrect, obviously, because King Abdullah is clearly is a dictator. He's an absolute monarch that in Saudi Arabia that he rules is a country, a kingdom of silence, is a country of oppression regarding women and other religious freedom, press freedom, any freedoms. Abuse of human rights is rampant to the degree he could not help himself but abuse the human rights of his 4 daughters who have been locked away for 14 years against their will and prevented from living normally. So this is not a person that you can call a reformer. Those who call him a reformer are either bigots or being bribed to say this. You know, calling an absolute monarch a dictator, a tyrant, a reformer is like saying there is a halal pork or there is a decent rapist. This doesn't go together.
And of course, people are pointing to the fact that he appointed 30 women to the Shura Advisory Council as a sign of his progressivism. What are women banned from doing right now in modern Saudi Arabia?
Women are basically banned from doing much of what you can do today. Like being on TV without the permission of your husband or your male master. You cannot play sports, you cannot have surgery on your own decision, you cannot go to school, attend school, move schools, you cannot go to work, you cannot register a business unless you have a male guardian, a master who tells you it's okay. You cannot marry, you cannot leave the country, you can't get a passport. So many things that a woman that is doing today. The woman status in Saudi Arabia is basically that of a car. It's controlled by a man, an owner. So very little things you can do in terms of your life and daily life.
And the women who were...
And as I can say that his own adult daughters are kept against their will behind closed doors for 14 years. They were starved for a few months too by him. So this is the story of every woman in Saudi Arabia.
It's extremely disturbing. I mean, you mentioned also kind of crackdown on the press, and I can't help bring up the public flogging of liberal blogger Raif Badawi. I mean, public beheadings, public humiliation are still very much the norm in this country. I mean, how has this type of medieval judicial system evolved under Abdullah's rule?
Well, the ruling family of Al Saud, they want to make sure one thing, that the society remains suppressed, and want to give the society an image that they, you know, this is very disturbing when a government or a ruler considers or describes his people to the foreigners as backward, as medieval. In fact, the monarchy makes sure that this appearance is projected outside to tell the people we are the vanguard, we are the progressive, we are the reformers, while our people are savages. It is the government that is carrying out these flags, not only in the case of Raif Badawi, but every day in Saudi Arabia, hundreds of people are flogged inside and outside the prisons. Every day, almost now, we have public executions. In fact, the son of King Abdullah, the ruler of Riyadh, has instituted an order just 2 weeks ago that floggings and beheadings now are to be carried out across the capital Riyadh, not only in certain places, but inside neighborhoods. So every child, woman, and man could see them, so they can be fearful of the monarchy.
I mean, I saw a woman getting beheaded in the middle of the street, and some guy was filming it, and it was absolutely insane. And now I read that they're actually going to arrest the man who filmed the video.
They arrested him, so they did not feel that it was a bad thing. You actually behead a woman in the middle of the street, in the middle of traffic, just like ISIS is doing.
Yeah, I mean, there's no differentiation. I mean, you're looking at a footage of ISIS next to that. It's hard to tell. What happened after the Arab Spring? Because, of course, we know that there were a lot of reforms made across the Middle East. I know that King Abdullah was definitely scared at that moment. Did they do anything to try to protect themselves from the people at that point to kind of lock more down?
Absolutely. You know, let's go back, have some history here. It's starting in 1953 with Egypt, and then Iraq, and then Libya, and then Iran. Monarchies fell around the Saudi monarchy, around the Gulf. So they wanted to protect themselves. Because they used religion, they used money, they used American support and British support mainly to protect themselves. So what they did when the Arab Spring took place, they made sure it is ruined. They called it the Arab Winter because it's going to mean that they will lose their power to the people. The people of that country have no power whatsoever. So they supported the coup in Egypt, they ruined the revolution, the peaceful revolution in Syria. They undermined the rising democracy in Iraq by supporting terrorism, and they are doing the same thing now in Yemen because they don't want the people to choose their way. They don't want people power to rise. They want monarchy, blue blood, very much like you had in Russia with the monarchy there falling. They don't want that to happen because that is the natural progress of history. And the most disturbing thing here is that the number one defender of the absolute monarchy in Saudi Arabia and the Gulf are none other than the United States and the Western democracies.
You bring up a really good point. I mean, here you have leaked cables by WikiLeaks that Saudi donors contribute the most significant source of funding to Sunni terrorists.
Absolutely.
I mean, and that obviously we know what ISIS initially was comprised of. There's even evidence of Saudi royal involvement in the 9/11 attacks, which we have covered up with our own government. We have 28 redacted pages that we refuse to release because it might harm this relationship with Saudi Arabia. Why are Western leaders fighting a war on terror and continuing to pledge unyielding support to this regime?
In fact, the disturbing comment by Kerry and Obama that King Abdullah is a revered leader, he's revered to maybe to them, but he's not revered to his own daughters. Saudi Arabia has produced at least 10,000 terrorists in Iraq and Syria and Yemen, and of course we don't forget 9/11, 15 out of the 19 were Saudis. So this is the product of the Saudi monarchy that controls every facet of life in Saudi Arabia. You cannot blame...
So is it just oil? We have about 30
It's not about
left.
oil. I'll tell you, there's two things, bigotry and bribery. We have to know that when Clinton says, or Blair, you know, that wonderful King Abdullah is a reformer, people love him. You know why? Because the Clintons and the Blairs and the others are getting paid, and that is the honest truth about it. Look at the Clinton Foundation, their funding, getting millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars to the Clinton Foundation, 35 billion to the Carter Center, and to the Blair. There is a huge contract for Tony Blair.
And we know about Bandar Bush, might as well have been another Bush brother, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. We need to get you on again to break all of this down. Thank you so much, Ali Al Ahmed, Director, Institute for Gulf Affairs. Really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much.
Coming up.